Okay, so remember that they're changing my voice. When you look at it in terms of martial arts, it's a lot easier to understand. And a lot of people in the military, in various circles, have pointed out that, in their opinion, if you look at it in terms of warfare in general, that the Bible is easier to understand, it takes on new meaning, etc. Okay, and one way or another, that's the truth. It's just specifically Royal African Falcon martial arts. That's the true key to understanding the Bible, right? Being the divine order, obeying God through me, and living that spirit, that tradition, what have you, which is the spirit of moral precision. Okay, for example, if you had two sons, okay, if you were a good person, you had two sons, and one was, and you're, say you're a white person, you're a good person, you had two sons. One was a social norm fanatic, and the other tried their hardest to do the right thing. Okay, and there came an issue, right? The issue was whether to obey an order in the military that was immoral. And one of them said they're not going to do it because it's wrong. And the other one said, no, this is how it's done. It's how it is, how things work, da, da, da. Which one would you be proud of? Okay. And so, when we look at the Bible, to understand it, we have to understand that it's written in like a certain type of martial art tradition. Okay, and we see in the movies sometimes, if you see enough martial art movies, you see it, where the master himself is the antagonist, and he's teaching. And now that's not me. That is not me, okay? I'm not gonna be a bad guy no matter what. I'm not the antagonist. But the way they're teaching it is they're the bad guy. Now, I hate to use, we'll say, for example of argument, we'll say if you were in ISIS, okay, if you were a member of a terrorist organization called ISIS, okay, the person teaching you about God, a lot of things in the Quran are true, mind you. The person that teaching you the thing about God, okay, is a bad guy. And he makes certain rules for that group. He's a bad guy. Okay? In order for you to actually connect to God, you need to conquer the idea of that person. You need to break free from the chains of being his student. And so if he makes a book that tells you that that's how you serve God, and he makes it himself, and he has his pecking order in mind. His main goal is to control you, to make you his slave, to whatever. He has ulterior motives. He's a bad guy. And so it is with the Bible and the Torah and the Quran. It's from systems of people who were the majority in that area. Those systems are not from a minority of good people that overcome a majority of wicked people and say, this is our book. It is from the majority of wicked people that screen out a minority of righteous people. Not necessarily not necessarily a racial minority. Okay. And then they wrote the story. If you do not understand that, you're at a great disadvantage. So when you see this stuff about the floodgates, in its true interpretation, it's true. But when you use social norms, mere human rules, customs, and traditions, it's wrong. Okay, for example, if you're in the American military and they were to tell you that heaven's armies magically, and obviously they're not, are the American military, that would be false. They would be lying to you. That's not heaven's army. That's the army of the United States of America. It's not the same thing. Okay, but the people who are the majority often use that propaganda. Okay, they often say that. They're using it in Israel. They use it all over the world to this day. They pretend that their nation is right with God, like one nation under God, but that's not the case. They even have a city called Sin City and the Rotten Apple. So when it says the floodgates of heaven, the gates of the nobles in Isaiah, where it also says the women will be raped and defiled, the children dashed to pieces, what have you. Okay, what is it saying? It's saying two things that stick out. One is the truth, and the other is a half-truth, and the half-truth is a lie, and you'll see that clearly in this example, where the half-truth lie is saying that the soldiers are going to punish these people on behalf of God. The soldiers and everyone, the officials, the merchants, the thugs, you name it, all these groups are going to punish them, okay? But those groups are not right with God when they punish them. They're like devils that are punishing them. They're not angels. So when the floodgates come, because people said to give him Barabbas, they get punished by the people who think like Barabbas. And it's not just the military or the police or the gangs or the churches, the mosques, the synagogues. It's everybody outside of the divine order. He says, they say, rally to the gates of the nobles, right? It didn't say of the Jews or of the Cushites or of this or that race. It said people who are righteous, to the moral order. Rally to the moral order and to the king, who's the heart and center of the moral order, and God is the king and heart and center of the king. And that is me, the top martial artist, the most morally right with God, the moral person, the most moral, the most righteous intensity, focus, moral intensity. So it's saying to rally to me. Okay, and those who don't are caught in a snare and a pit. Is everyone literally caught in a snare? When you see someone who's obviously a sinner, and everyone who doesn't obey God through me is a sinner, but some people it's more obvious than others. Do you see them literally in a snare? Almost never do you see that. Most sinners aren't locked up. They're not in chains. They're not in handcuffs. Okay, it's figurative. They're snared psychologically. They're snared mentally and spiritually. They're snared in principle. Their philosophy, they're snared philosophically. Their philosophy has them stuck outside of the divine order where they're catching wreck. And it's a pattern in nature. When you see somebody who is eating all the time and they're not working out, they might get diabetes and hypertension. Their body's decaying at a faster rate. Their brain is decaying. It's bad for their brain and their body. If you were to jump off a cliff for no reason, the principles of gravity would kill you. So we know that if you're not right with the principles of what God expects, that you're going to suffer. And the devil throws the curveball in confusing you about the fact that the righteous also suffer, even though Christ is depicted on a cross, even though you know that so many early Christians were killed and as part of their narrative, part of their story. A story that's superimposed on the true story of the Royal African Falcon Martial Art Order. How do you know? It's in the story how you know. You know them by their fruit. Okay, it's also the story of the two sons. One said he wasn't going to go work in the vineyard and did, and one said that he was and didn't. The one who did God's work is the one who actually did the work, not who said he was going to do the work. It's in the parable of the tenants. They didn't do what they're supposed to do, so the kingdom of heaven was taken away from them. But who, what, when, where, how, why? He says the truth is hidden in the parable. In Amos 9:7, it says, "Are you not the same as the Cushites unto me, O children of Israel?" Which ones? Those who do what Nimrod did when he was right with God, and he was right with God as far as the story tells us, are the children of Nimrod. And before Abraham is Nimrod, before Abraham I am, a mighty warrior before the Lord. Exodus 15:3, the Lord is the warrior, the Lord is his name. So the children of Nimrod, the Royal African Falcon Martial Art Order, the falcon being the symbol of wisdom in the Bible as well. I believe it's in Job. Okay, the hawk/falcon. Okay. The children of wisdom, the children of God, the children of the tree of life, the fruit of life, the fruit of the righteous is a tree of life. The fruit of the righteous, out of the mouth of the righteous comes the fruit of wisdom. Wisdom is the tree. Moral wisdom. Righteousness, justice. And that's the Royal African Falcon Martial Art Order. And how do you know that I'm not someone who's lying? Because you know by their fruit. If you were of God, you would do what God wants you to do. And how do we know what God wants you to do? Because God is exalted by his acts of justice and righteousness. So if they were the order of God, they would be morally precise. They wouldn't be using propaganda. If they were the order of God, they would be doing what is wise and righteous. If they were the order of God, they would be a morally precise martial art order. And the only place you see that is in me. I am that I am. No one else is. Not other black people, not Jews, not the white people who call themselves the master race and have swastikas. I am that I am, not them. And you know by my deeds and my morally precise argument. My religion is not propaganda or racial supremacy. It's moral precision. Okay, so really quickly, in case you didn't catch it the first time, the gates of the nobles is me, right? I am the gate. Because in order to be right with God in principle, you have to obey God through me, which means you have to go through me. The orders come through me. And in order for you to prove your allegiance to God, your spirit has to come through me by obeying God through me. I am the king. I am the gate. I am the good shepherd. I am the way, the truth, and the life, the truth of the matter. Okay? And Christ's father, right? Patriarchal lines, right? The patriarchs was God. He was not a Jewish male. Okay? So God, according to your own kind of scale, which is skewed, if you're trapped in the story, you don't realize it's superimposed on the truth, right? It's a parable where it tells the truth in a complex way that's misleading to some degree. And Jesus explains it in several points why that is, and Isaiah explains it, but they explain it in a way that's vague, okay? But he says that people are basically doing the wrong thing, and they're going to be punished by having this vague explanation. I don't agree that that's what should be done. Okay, that's not righteousness. That's why the Bible is by Baal and not by God's Son. It's by Set, the principles of evil, and not by the falcon, the hawk, which is the symbol of wisdom in Job, the symbol of the principles of moral wisdom, the principles of good. So the Bible is by Baal, the haunt for jackals and unclean and detestable animals, instead of the noble animals of God that fly high figuratively by the sun, okay, not to be confused with the rape cult, how the eagle is used, which is the eagle of Zeus, which is the eagle of Set. Zeus is Set's Greek counterpart. It's a story for another day, but in a nutshell, okay, the floodgates, the water is the water of righteousness in the spiritual realm, in the realm of principle. Like you can't see gravity, but it's still doing what it's doing. You can't see righteousness in a sense, in some ways, in some points, but it's still doing what it's doing, and it's waging war on the wicked, and it's marshaling them to their fate.